Hey guys, thanks for joining us here for another episode of Assessed Bushcraft and Survival. We're excited today for this video. It's one that technically has been a long time coming, 4 years to be exact. And that's because we're going to be running through some homemade MRE units that we actually made 4 years ago. Part of the reason we wanted to put this video is that we're curious as to how these have held up, obviously given the perishable nature of the items inside.
These rations have been stored in a cool, dry location, such as the back of a pantry or under the stairs. In some houses they have storage under the stairs. Each ration contains a decent main meal to sustain you for 24 hours. It contains coffee to keep you awake and alert and your first at bay. It contains a dessert and either a tissue paper, tissue or toilet paper ration, depending what material is available at the cheapest. It should also be noted that the lists that actually tell you what menu is in what ration are specifically made on standard paper so that they can be burnt in place of tinder should you need them. These rations do, however, unlike traditional government-produced MREs, require you to provide your own cooking mess kit, water, and your utensils for eating. This was due to issues in obtaining MRE heater bags and the subsequent waste of them, because that's yet another thing you've got to throw out. Here at Assessed Bushcraft and Survival, we're environmentally conscious and we believe that a reusable approach is the best. And in our experience of going bush quite often, pretty much whenever we can, we've found we always have a cooking tool, some sort of camp stove, whether it's a spirit burner or a pressurized burner, it doesn't matter. We always have some sort of cooking utensils and or a pot available to us.
So on that note, it should be mentioned that the items that we've included as edibles are obviously all items that are very high in calories, so that way when you're out in the field you're getting yourself a good dose of energy, so that way you're able to work through and do all of the necessary items that we speak about in some of the videos that obviously you've watched to date with regards to defending yourself or hunting or creating your secure environment and the like, because obviously that's something that is very difficult to maintain if you are in an emergency situation, depending on your circumstance. And obviously if you don't have that energy intake and you're not able to perform any of the other items that are on our list of essential things to do in an emergency situation, then obviously that's just going to leave you worse for wear.
So guys, as you can see, we have one of each of our two favourite menus that we've compiled, fully packaged and prepared. It was packed by us about 4 years ago, as Bushcraft said, but we thought we'd like to show you why we actually go to the trouble of making these rations. As you can see behind, this is a pile of everything that goes into a ration except the menu slip. And I'll just put a menu slip just here to show you. So this entire pile that you see here now is what goes into one of these rations. So basically, as we've previously mentioned, you've got a drink, in this case coffee. We love our coffee. We've got a dessert, a lot of sugar, nice little pick-me-up, something to just help cheer you up when you're out and about in the bush, because sometimes it can be miserable, especially if it's raining. We've got, as I said, in this case it's tissues. You could have toilet paper, or even if it turns out to be the cheapest, a bit of tissue paper. Scrunch it up a few times, nice and soft. So that's to help clean up, and it saves us having to pack separate rations of toilet paper. Finally, we have 2 packs of instant noodles. That way, should you not want to eat them at once, you can have one early in the day and one closer to the evening. So we're going to have a look at what is actually in these menus. So if Bushcraft would come over here and give us a hand, this is Ration Pack number 1. Now, I was just wondering, is that your favourite one? Because I'm pretty sure that's one of my favourites. I'm not that picky. I like both. However, this would have to be my favourite because this has instant chicken noodle soup in it. Menu number 2.
This one in particular is my favourite, just for the dessert. I love myself a good chocky.
Oh yeah, I've got
I know you've got the berry version.
I've got a berry dessert in my one,
Yeah.
which I am very fond of.
Yeah. No, perfect. All right. Well, let's crack them open. Have we got a utensil?
I'll just grab a trusty utensil to slash them open with. Now, every so often, when we've got the luxury of going bush at our choosing, I always carry auxiliary bags. One of the things I carry in that is probably my most favourite luxury item. That's a pair of scissors. You never know when you need them. They're very handy to have, but I do stress, they are a luxury item. They're not a necessity to take out bush. And the reason I would use these over a knife is because A, they're available, and B, it allows to preserve the vac bags in order to use them as a water carrier or a rubbish bag. Remember, leave no trace when you're in the bush, guys. So we'll crack open ration menu number 2.
I think go whole hog. We'll just open both of them up.
That's a good idea.
Pair yours.
Crack them both open.
Some excellent scissor technique there, mate.
Thank you. So Bushcraft, what do you say we flip these over and slowly pull out each item in them?
Alrighty. I've got here the instant noodle packet.
Yep.
That's one. My little choppy.
I've got my instant soup here.
Yeah.
That looks like it's actually been punctured. We'll have to see how well that's lasted. That'll be interesting to know.
That's it. My instant soup packet there.
Got my coffee. Got my berry desserts.
My noodle packets.
Got my other instant noodles.
Yeah.
Got my toilet paper ration.
Oh, look at that. Actual toilet paper. That's a
And
luxury.
we just chuck this
Bit of
sheet
tinder.
down here.
Bit of tinder.
Good tinder for us. That's
Yeah.
our menu slip. And we have nice bags remaining,
Yeah.
which we can use for water and or for rubbish.
Fantastic. Alright. Let's get some bowls and get this cracking.
As we've been preparing the initial part, the soup that's in each ration, we noticed that the chicken noodle from menu number 2 had a puncher in it, and it seems to have resulted in letting it go off. So we're still going to try and mix it to see whether it has gone off or whether it's just it had a bit of air get to it, but it's still good.
Yeah, it's one of those items. I mean, all of these are individually sealed. They obviously all have their own use by dates and the like. I mean, like I said, 4 years is a mighty long time for an MRE to be hanging out. With that in mind, I think you'll learn over this video series that I'm a fan of putting my stomach through horrendous conditions just for the fun of it. So, despite the fact that Survival's looking at me warily, really not wanting to put any element of this into his body, I'm telling him to push forward. So I hope you guys appreciate that.
And I'm doing this so that we can show you just what a 4-year-old ration is like. Now, we expect that you consume your rations a lot closer to the date you packed them, but when we realised we had these spare, we thought it would be a good experiment.
Yeah, funnily enough, these ones actually these were part of the early run of MREs, I guess you could say.
When we were learning, we made mistakes, but we've since learned from said mistakes. It'll be interesting to see just how badly or well we did.
Yeah, these ones were actually kept in a spot they'd fallen down and out of the way, and so
got forgotten about.
Yeah, when Survival was just moving through, having a look at some of the other bags and things like that we had for some reviews, and yeah, he just happened to see those, and we just thought it'd be a bit of a laugh. And the good news about this is that we can consume some off 4-year-old food, so you don't have to, and that's really what this is all about,
It should be noted, whilst the stuff may be off, it all has only best befores, which means it's still safe to consume, even if it tastes foul.
Yeah, see, that's what I always say. It's always safe to consume, even if it tastes foul, and even if you pay for it the next day on the loo.
So, guys, whilst we were preparing the soups, we noticed that the chicken noodle soup had a puncher in it, and part of it had solidified. We still mixed it up nonetheless, It seems to have dissolved nicely and taken on the consistency one would expect from an instant 2 to 3 minute infusion instant soup. These rations were actually discovered at the back. They'd fallen off the back of a shelf behind the unit, and whilst we were clearing up and going through some of our surplus equipment, which we're looking at reviewing and or using to instruct you with, we found these rations, and 4 years with a puncher, I'm actually impressed how well it is. It was interesting to note that when Bushcraft inspected the actual vac bag, the vac bag was completely intact. Only the inner sachet was punctured. So we're going to go and try these soups, and we'll let you guys know just what we think of them. And remember, whilst this stuff might be old, it is not expired. It has only gone past its best before. The best before guarantees the flavour up until that point. Beyond that, the food is still safe to consume. However, it may taste foul.
It really looks good. It's got some good consistency to it. That's what I'd expect.
I've noticed in this soup that had the puncher, the chicken noodle, a lot of flavour has disappeared because part of it did solidify in the sachet.
Yeah, well, it's got the consistency that I'd expect of this. It smells appropriate.
The noodles have gone a little chalky, but I would assume that's from the packet having been punctured, and some, not a lot, but some oxygen getting in.
That's real tasty. Yeah, I've got to say, it was noted on my packet that
With the Dutch curry and rice.
Yeah, there was some discoloration on the outside. We couldn't find any.
It must have leached.
Yeah, I was going to say, we couldn't find any punctures or actual holes or cuts, but it seems like it had leached through. And I guess that makes a lot of sense. These packets aren't designed for super long-term storage. I mean, I think
6 months to a year at most. This is 4 years, if not a whisker longer.
Which, again, wonderful benefit of vac sealing anything. Even for short-term consumption, you're going to assure yourself fresher, higher quality food products. So that includes, if you were to go down to the deli and buy yourself some lunch meats, or jump down to Costco, get yourself some bulk buy meats, cut them up, vac seal them.
Freeze them easily. They take a lot less space in your freezer. Just make sure they freeze first before you stand them up against each other. The last thing you want is the meat to go bad because it didn't freeze properly, because it was all stacked hard against each other. But I mean, look, I may have lost probably 80% of the flavour in mine, but it's still completely palatable. It tastes alright. I'm happily digging in. How's your Dutch curry and rice, Bushcraft?
It's fantastic. I'd really like to be eating this with my noodles. Just saying,
We'll get to our main course, which are instant noodles, very soon. We have here in each of the rations, this is always menu independent, 1 packet of chicken flavour and 1 of beef. We like to call the mix chibuf. It's a mix of chicken and beef.
Yeah, Survival was super proud of himself when he came up with that mix. He was like, mate, you got to understand, I've eaten a hell of a lot of these noodles, and now that I've discovered that I can mix the flavours together, I'm just going wild.
Yeah. Usually when flavours get mixed, it usually doesn't work, but in this case, rest assured, we've tried it many a times, many different trips out bush to the middle of nowhere. All we've had are 2-minute noodles because they're easy to take, easy to cook, easy to prepare, and that's why we like them. We find in the bush where it may take, say, 2 or 3 minutes to prepare, normally at home in a kitchen, it can take up to 5 in the bush, but that's due to differences in what equipment you're cooking with, as well as atmospheric conditions.
Should be noted that when Survival opened his packet, he was mortified to see the contents, and he was looking at it very reluctantly, not wanting to give it a shot. I pushed through. I got him to give it a shot, and now he's nodding his head in approval. He's glad that he gave it a shot. Number one, because this is obviously an experience for him, knowing that his 4-year-old MREs are going to be on point, to where we being in a situation where 4 years from now some of our MREs are in the same circumstance. We know that we can confidently eat them, but moreover than that, for you guys, because like we said before, we go through this kind of stuff, so if anything were to happen, you guys don't have to.
The good thing to note is, whilst these products are generally intended for 6 to 8, sometimes a year's worth of storage from factory, they have actually held up surprisingly well. And as Bushcraft said, the extra bag that they were vac bagged in, that extra protection really helped a lot. So now we're going to start cooking our instant noodles. We'll get back to you soon with what we think of them. So as I was cooking our instant noodles, I noticed that the flavour sachets have started to partially solidify, and they're fairly difficult to actually get out of the sachet. The noodles, they seem to cook a lot quicker than they otherwise normally should, and they don't seem to be as soft and fluffy as one would expect. So here you go, Bushcraft. It's from your menu.
Excellent, thanks Survival.
Bushcraft, have a taste, let us know what you think. I'll be with you in just a sec.
I can see what you mean about the texture. A little more gluggy, I think is the term I'd use. But flavour-wise,
I thought I'd save dirtying the bowl. Here's mine, guys. As you can see, the sachets have not broken up anywhere near as well as they should in my MRE, and they've left lumps down the bottom, such as that, of flavouring. They seem to be stickier and denser than normal.
Man, I gotta feel bad for your Survival, man. I mean, mine is pretty good. Got a pretty good coating of flavour all the way through mine.
Mine seem to have gone chalky in taste. They must have been punctured as well, at least inside the main bag, because as I said before, Bushcraft checked the MRE vac bag and it didn't have a single puncture in it at all.
So what you guys don't know is that I undermined Survival, and I pretty much wanted to be the sole survivor, so I made sure that all his MREs actually have deficiencies. That way he'd be less inclined to eat them if anything were to go down, and I'd be the one that would get all of his supplies, therefore allowing me to last even longer.
Bushcraft jests. We're in this together. We don't do that for real to each other. And, whilst it mightn't be the tastiest, I'm still happy to eat it. It is still tasty. It's just not as exciting or wonderful as it was when it was new.
Were it really the case, guys, I'd probably have shared mine with him. Half it out, so that way at least we've both got a semi-decent meal instead of one of us having a great meal and one of us having a piss poor one.
And that is exactly one of the reasons we always pack either multiple rations, or if we have to split one, that's why we make sure our main is actually a 2-parter, so there's 2 standard serves, not just one giant one.
Yeah, exactly right.
We're back now. So we've had our main course, and before that we had our soup. We're going to look at our coffee now, because we're feeling thirsty and we're a little sick of eating right now at the moment. So I'm going to make Bushcraft and I some coffee. This is 2 sachets of instant 3-in-1. There's always 2 sachets in each ration. That way, should you decide to split your ration over 2 meals, you've got a coffee with each. Now, the reason we take these sachets is, as I said, they're a 3-in-1, so that's for coffee, sugar and a milk substitute, which means we don't need to carry extra stuff with us. Everything's in the one packet, ready to go, and in the correct proportions.
It should be noted that, MREs in general, I think you'll agree, Survival are really a luxury in and of themselves. I mean, they take some time to have prepared and available. They take some forethought in terms of design and storage, and with that in mind, the items included really are those of a luxury nature. If you were thrown out, thrown in the deep end, let's just say you were the sole survivor of a plane crash or the like, unless you were so inclined, probably unlikely that you've got yourself any type of food item of substance.
I would have to completely agree with you there, Bushcraft. The other thing to note also is, as they are a luxury, they're not guaranteed to necessarily taste the best. I mean, yes, when we go bush, we take ones which are fairly recently produced. However, today is a fine example of what happens when you go for a ration which has been sitting for a while because you're using it out of necessity, not out of choice.
I mean, what's great though is, when you put these together, embellishing a little bit, making serves that are a little bit larger, a little bit more calorie dense than what you might find out in the bush. I mean, the truth be told, depending on your trapping skills and your gathering skills,
And your hunting skills.
yeah, you may be in a situation, and also I guess location.
And time of year has an event occurred, is there a reason that the population is either low or not there?
Yeah, no, exactly right. All these factors considered, there may be a reason why there isn't food available, and if that is the case, let's just say you've got yourself a dozen of these MREs. Instead of, again, in ideal circumstances, you'd perhaps make them one per meal. So you might have one for breakfast, one for lunch, one for dinner, to make sure that you're keeping your calorie intake high, so you can keep that energy impact high throughout the day. But you've got yourself a dozen of these, and you're going to be in there for an extended stay, or unsure about how long you will be there, to try and get your survival as long as possible. You might only make one of these MREs be your single meal for the day. Obviously not ideal. I mean, worst situation, you're in it with a partner and you've only got a dozen of these. You might split these MREs so you're only having half an MRE per day, which again, not ideal, but by doing that, and if you had yourself a dozen MREs, you might be able to stretch that out to obviously last you up to almost 2 weeks per se. And in some circumstances, if there is an active search and rescue team available, you've gone hiking and you've wandered off and you thought you were only going to be there for say a week, and
You haven't returned, your mates have alerted authorities, and
Yeah.
the search has begun, then it's not as bad. But what happens if no one knows you're missing, or if no one's available to come help look for you?
Yeah, exactly right. So being able to have that mindset, create that preparedness. I mean, 9 out of 10 times, your situation probably isn't going to be so dire that there isn't some kind of food substitute available. A stream nearby that you can try and make a primitive kind of line and do a little bit of fishing, or
You could get gabbies potentially out of them.
yeah. So hopefully there's an idea that maybe you can use one MRE and also whatever food you might be producing per day. Being able to make it really easy.
Here's your
to
coffee,
move forward.
Bushcraft.
Oh,
4
thank you, mate.
years old, 3 in 1.
Fantastic.
I've got some for myself.
I'm gonna be curious to see how the milk substitute has fared.
Well, the flavour in the coffee seems to be there. There's a bit of a sickly, sweet kick getting on the tail end of it, which normally isn't there. That could be the milk substitute going bad.
Yeah, looking in there a little bit.
They look fairly similar. Some of the milk substitute in Bushcraft has failed to dissolve.
Yeah.
Mine, it seems to have dissolved completely.
Well, I'll tell you what. Given how well my soup and my noodles came out, I think it's all right to say that I'm happy with getting subpar 3-in-1 coffee, given that you had to have subpar food.
And look, to be honest, even though it does have that sickly kick at the end of it as it goes down, it's still coffee. It's keeping you alert, it's keeping you awake, and a little bit of cream if it won't dissolve, you barely taste the difference. What matters is how the entire product has stood up to the time and the elements. And yes, even in a cool, dry location, there are some temperature fluctuations which can cause things such as packet sweating and other forms of degradation or oxygen penetration.
Survival, you know I've got a sweet tooth, I'm not going to lie. If I can keep all my coffee out in the oven for 4 years in a vac seal bag, if it's going to turn out like this, I'm super happy. This stuff tastes great.
I hear. It does taste grouse. That must have been just a little bit I had, because every mouthful I've had since hasn't had any sickly sweet kick at the end of it. It's been nice.
Yeah, smooth, creamy smoothie.
Some good coffee. And I'm very impressed at it. I've never seen coffee withstand for that long and keep such good flavour before.
Perfect. Done and dusted.
I've just finished mine as well. I reckon we should try one of our desserts. Now, Bushcraft has a chocolate dessert. I have a berry dessert. We'll open these up and then we'll show you what they look like as soon as we remove the wrappers.
Interesting.
It feels like the wrapper is closer to the product than ever before.
Yeah.
The vacuum really has pushed it down, and it is proving somewhat difficult to open as you're having to peel it out.
It's difficult to see there, but the vac seems to have pushed all the air outside of it, which, you know, it's fine. That's what you kind of want, I guess, the vacuum to inoculate all the air that's in there.
So what I've noticed on my berry one, which is berries in chocolate, part of it's been crushed down. It's actually crushed some of the chocolate. So I'll be interested to see how she holds up.
Yeah. So noting on mine, it also has been crushed. Some of the contents have leaked out to the external, which, you know, shouldn't affect flavour too much. But in terms of the general feel of it in my hand, it's it doesn't seem to be too bad.
With the berry dessert, a lot of the nice luscious redness has disappeared. It has become somewhat dry. It's become extremely bitter. And the milk chocolate now resembles more of a dark chocolate flavour due to the just changes in the berry filling. Still nice nonetheless.
It's interesting. The consistency has definitely changed for this. You can see the colour of the caramel's a little bit low. I think the nougat here is a little bit chalky's not quite what I want. It's kind of, instead of being the consistency of like what I'd consider a chocolate, it's kind of more like it's kind of more like a slice. You get yourself like a caramel slice or something.
Yeah, and a little more dense.
Yeah, dense is definitely a word that I'd use to describe that.
But good nonetheless, would you say, Bushcraft?
Look, it's one of those things. If I was to go down to the store and buy that and have that same flavour experience, I'd be upset. But
given it's a 4-year-old DIY ration,
yeah, I'm impressed with the fact that it's still so edible, for sure.
And by the way, guys, when we cracked out our instant noodles, we realised, and we knew based on when we bought them, that it was fairly close to the best before date on them. So we've realised it's actually just over 4 years. It's actually 4 years, 3 months since we packed it, and we're now cracking it open.
But yeah, as I was saying, so I'm impressed with exactly how edible that chocolate was. Yeah, definitely. I certainly wouldn't be complaining if I was out in the field, cracked that open, and had that kind of experience. In fact, in that kind of a situation, I might not even notice the difference. I'd probably have eaten that whole in one and probably not even had a second thought about its texture or flavour.
And as to be noted, like with the main course, the desserts, there's always 2 of in each ration.
Yep.
And that is so that should, as we mentioned before, your buddy's one be destroyed or impossible to consume, you can share with your buddy.
Yeah, for sure. Not that I'm sharing with you, mate, because I'm taking this off later.
That's alright, mate. I've got a ration that's fine. So now, I'm just going to quickly show you our napkin/toilet paper ration. As we've mentioned in our Essentials of a Campfire video, we like toilet paper in the bush as a kindling and tinder because it smoulders really well. Sparks don't just disappear. We also like it because it makes really great tissues, soft on the nose. Really wonderful for when you've got a sore nose because middle of winter you're out in the bush, you've got a cold but you're enjoying being out there. One less thing to stop your trip from being ruined. Further, we've got quite a bit here. As you can see, I've unrolled my toilet paper ration. It's approximately 16 squares, which is what we usually get from going around 8 times on a spread out hand loosely. The key here is when you're designing the ration length, wrap loosely, because you want that little bit extra, even though it does get wrapped tightly, usually along the seams.